Founders, welcome back to the 0 to 5,000 podcast, where we obsess over the convergence of human potential and business results. Today, our hosts Drew McClure and Jordan Mitchell have another insightful conversation for you. So let's jump right in.
Okay, founders, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are joined by Carrie Cook. Ms. Cook holds 2 executive level roles consecutively as president of Ignite Funding and CEO of Preferred Trust Company. As the president of Ignite Funding since April 2011, Ms. Cook brings more than 15 years of experience specializing in private lending and is a licensed mortgage broker with the Nevada Mortgage Lending Division and Arizona Department of Financial Institutions. And today, to tell us about her story, is Carrie herself. So Carrie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, so excited to chat with you today, especially, I think you might be my first guest to hold 2 executive level roles at the same time. How does that happen?
Well, here's the backstory. So in 2011, when I took over as the president of Ignite Funding, about 3 years after that, the owners of the company came to me and said, "Hey, Cook, will you go look under the hood over at Preferred Trust? I think that we could, I think we should be changing some things over there. I don't know, but I got this sense, whatever." And I said, "All right, I'll go over on a consulting basis," right? This is how every story starts. "I'll go over on a consulting basis. I'll take a look. I'll let you know what's going on, and we'll go from there." Now, at the time, the locations of the companies were 2 separate, across town
Okay.
from one another. So I started going over to Preferred Trust. I started looking under the hood, as he defined it, and I did not like what I saw. And so when I presented him with my report and my analysis, and I'm the type that likes to see it all the way through. So, here's what you should change. Here's operationally what's broken. Here's how you could fix it, all that stuff. And I brought that to him and he said, oh my gosh, we have to fix this." And I'm like, we have to fix this?
That's a you problem.
Yeah. I'm like, wait a second. But I said, you know what? Let me talk with my staff at Ignite Funding. Because at the time I was building Ignite Funding, right? They needed me just as much as Preferred Trust needed me, which I figured out. And so I sat down with my staff and I said, "Here's the deal, guys. I'm going to spend 3 days a week here and 2 days a week there. And we're going to fight through this. But I think the synergies that will come of this from the 2 companies is going to be worth my time and worth yours." And so, I got a commitment from my staff at Ignite Funding. I call it almost a blessing from them to do so. And I started taking on the dual role. Very quickly, I realized I got to put those 2 companies together. And I have that now under one roof. And it really has been amazing for both companies' growth.
Cool. And what are the different functions of the 2 businesses?
Ignite Funding is a mortgage broker. From the traditional sense, a mortgage broker is going out and finding real estate projects that need financing, whether that be residential or commercial. And we're pairing the needs of the financing from the borrowers with the desire of investors to invest in collateralized real estate, earning a double-digit return. Okay, that's what Ignite Funding does.
Yep.
Preferred Trust Company is a self-directed custodian. We only specialize in holding alternative assets in a self-directed IRA. So alternative assets being digital currency, precious metals, real estate, small businesses. Heck, we have people that have cattle, you name it, but all alternative type assets that help you diversify your portfolio.
Okay, got it. I kind of understand what you're talking about. It's a world that I get. I mean, I bought a house before. I understand some of that. But what I'm curious about, though, is when you stepped in, it sounds like with both businesses, at that real leadership helm, there was some need for improvement, some evolution. What were some of those things you were spotting that, hey, we could be better than this?
Yeah. From the Ignite, I'll take Ignite Funding first. From the Ignite Funding perspective, when I took over Ignite, Ignite was $700,000 in the hole. And most people wouldn't want to step into something like that and go, "I got this." But for me, I saw the bigger picture. We were coming out of the storm of 2008. We were a commercial broker, but we also had a residential arm. So not only were we a commercial lender, we were also a residential lender from the traditional sense. Homes that you're purchasing, the FHA, conventional style financing. And at the same time that the commercial side was getting pummeled from the residential, so was the residential lending side with the Dodd-Franks.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we looked at the bigger picture of what was happening within the companies, there was consolidation needs that had to occur. It absolutely had to occur because we were getting pummeled from all angles of what was happening within the economy. And so when I took over from the Ignite funding perspective, we had to make some very swift changes quickly from the residential lending side to remove that arm and solely focus on the commercial side. And that's what I had knowledge in. That's where I came from, that world. And so marketing that, understanding the sales of that, understanding the people behind it, it was a natural transition for the owners to say, Carrie, take the helm. Let's see what you can do with this thing. Because quite frankly, we were rolling the dice at the time. And so it really was just digging into the trenches, determining the people that you needed to keep. I say need because I needed doers. I did not need chefs. I did not need any chefs in the kitchen. And I wasn't a chef in the kitchen. I was a doer at the same time. And there were 10 of us. And we took it from a deficit of $700,000. And we've now grown it to a multi-million-dollar net company.
Wow.
And it's been a ton of fun. From the preferred trust perspective, sorry, you've got two stories here going at the same time. From the preferred trust perspective, unfortunately, there weren't the right people at the helm, and the reporting that was going out to the clients was just not adequate enough to meet the regulatory standards of reporting to the IRS and reporting to the Nevada Financial Institutions Division as a full-fledged bank operation. And so, compliance, not cutting corners, those sorts of things, that's a pillar of what I exemplify. So naturally, the compliance element of it is, well, I can get in there and fix this very quickly. And then looking at it from a diversification standpoint, a company cannot survive from just one element. They have to have multiple elements associated with it. And so that's one thing that we absolutely had to do. And that's what we did. We went in, we ripped it apart, and we put it back together, make it stronger than ever, and well diversified in the types of alternative assets that we were custodying.
Super cool. I want to go back to the Ignite story. You come in a real hard time, right? Mm-hmm. You're not right in 2008, but it sounds like you're still in the wake of not being an ideal climate for your business to survive or thrive in.
Yeah.
You make the first big call to really narrow your focus, really prune the business and divert resources to this one thing. But that's still a scary time. It's you and 10 people or you and 9 people, however that works.
Yeah.
What other important decisions or things did you do in that first year to start moving the ship in the right direction?
Well, first and foremost, you're right. I got a very tough exterior very quickly. We were a very large corporation at the time. I went through and had to terminate about 150 people.
Wow.
And so just to put it in perspective, the company at the time we knew how to monetize a lead. Let's just put it that way. Leads would come in. We had a debt company, we had an insurance company, we had a residential arm, we had, a mortgage broker, we had a commercial broker. We were a full-fledged A to Z. The leads come in, we monetize them across the board. First step, you're right. Bring it down. Just take it down to the bare bones of what is necessary and what is needed.
Yeah.
From there, once you have that element, now it's a recovery zone. So we were taking back assets. So at the same time that we're going back out into the world of lending, we're still an asset manager, right? Because we've taken back about $500 million of assets. So we're managing those assets on behalf of the investors at the same time, right? Because now you're in the storm, right? You're still in the storm. And the vast majority of our assets were in Las Vegas. And Las Vegas got hit by about 90% value. Think about that for just a second. You're in your home. Yeah, 90% of the value is swept out from underneath you within about a 30-day period.
Huh.
I mean, you want to talk shitstorm.
Yeah.
It was a battle of battles. So what I had to do is I had to make sure that we didn't hide behind it. We were transparent. We were upfront. We had town hall meetings with clients and investors. We put everything out there that was going on, because the effect of what happened wasn't our doing. It was the economic component that was the factor that was affecting all of us, from our personal residence to our real estate investments that we had. So that transparency and maintaining that level of transparency and communication with clients is what kept our client base intact enough to move forward. If we would have walked away, or we would have done capital calls, or, we would have done some crazy maneuvering, it would have never worked. So the base of the clients for Ignite Funding were the clients that really worked through the entire process with us. That gave me the base to then leverage from. My next component that I had to do is I had to be different than everybody else. I had to diversify into a variety of different areas. I was no longer going to be pummeled by the Las Vegas market anymore. So today, Ignite Funding is in 13 different states that we lend in. We do that because the level of our portfolio diversification is just as important for us as it is for the investors, right? So we have to be diversified. So that was another major, major change that we made. And that's difficult to follow with all the regulations that we are, have to follow from a day-to-day basis from a commercial lender. Is it a security? Is it not? How's it going to be viewed from the regulatory standpoint? We had to work through all of that. And then we had to figure out how to raise more capital in an environment where individuals have just come out of losing a lot of money in real estate. So it was all about, how do you get over the fear? How do you educate clients about getting over the fear? We're not a sales organization. We're not. We're an educational organization. And when you get the sales component out of your mind and you don't think of it from that perspective, you think of it from pure education, you really can get into the minds of people, get the integrity, the trust that you need to have them try it. And when everybody else was out there saying, our barrier to entry is $50,000, $100,000, I actually moved ours down instead of up. I moved it down to 10. And I did that very strategically because people needed to dip their toe back into the water slowly. So having it at 50, for the rest of you, go do it. It was too much. We had to bring it down because we had to basically prove ourselves again to the general public that real estate was still a good investment.
Yeah.
So those are some of the key components that had to happen.
Yeah. There's a few things I want to touch on because they applied to me, which means they're going to apply outside of just your context in the unique industry you're in. For anyone listening, what you said about sales, I think applies across the board. Like the worst sales I've ever done was when I was trying to do sales.
Yeah.
The best sales, I had a sales coach. So outside of the podcast, I run a people development coaching firm for executives, leadership teams, that kind of thing. And so I knew how to do the coaching. I did not know how to actually do the sales component of that business. And so we hired a sales coach. And he said, man, it's clear, like you're a great coach, you're a terrible salesperson. I was like, I agree. That's why I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
And he said, let me take a burden off your shoulder. I actually don't need you to be a salesperson. I need you to think about your discovery calls, your initial conversations, being like a doctor. And you want the integrity of a doctor, and meaning like if they don't need you, you're not going to sell, right? And all you're doing is trying to understand what's happening. And like you said, educate where you have experience of where you might be able to help, giving information, that type of thing. And it was so much easier. It felt more integrous. It felt like it would be a no-brainer when we would start to work together, right? And that's what it sounds like for you as well, is like as you're educating the market, as you're educating the people in front of you, it's either a no-brainer that we work together or it doesn't make sense at this time. Is that fair?
Absolutely. The psychology of people is something that I think most business owners or CEOs or presidents, they just miss.
Yeah.
From the employee perspective as well as the client perspective. And you really have to build a relationship. There is no
Yes.
sale without a relationship, period.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
I heard someone say business moves at the speed of trust.
that's right.
So building that trust, right?
100%.
I love that. The other thing too that you said that I wanted to capitalize on, God, what was it? I just lost my train of thought. I was trying to think about who said that quote, business moves at the speed of trust, and I can't remember who that's from. That threw me off. Shoot. Huh, it'll come back to me. Okay,
That's
so
all right.
it's all right. It'll come back to me. But there was another tactic. Oh, I know what it was. You talked about lowering the barrier of entry.
Yeah.
Again, as I was learning, this is about 5-6 years ago, as I was learning about why are we moving forward in these areas and we're not getting these clients, or they're stalling out at this certain part of the process, I realized we were going too quickly to an investment size that we hadn't built that trust yet, right? So our first offering was a pretty big investment for them to make. And so they would always stall out there. And so I came back and I said, we got to break this down. We need to give a much smaller first offering that they can taste and see, hey, do we like this company?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is this working? Is the ROI going to be there? And then we can up our investment and that unlocked that sales channel for us. And you did the same thing. Like, okay, maybe 5 years ago, people had no problem starting at $50,000.
Yeah.
But right now they're like, I don't know if I trust this. And so we got to let them see it first, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to barrier to entry, one of the things that I have tried to instill in people is that, when you're looking at utilizing your hard-earned money, right? And you're building that level of trust with somebody, your barriers to entry can come down if your efficiencies go up. And I think the fear of individuals of driving it down is so consuming that they can't figure out, like, well, I can't afford to do that. You can afford to do it, but your efficiencies have to come with it. And so as we were driving that barrier down, we're like, we have 10 people to do this with. How are we going to be more efficient so that we can afford to do this? So it's a two-way street on that one. You can't drive it down without it.
Yeah. So how did you approach the efficiency side of that?
So efficiency is interesting because you can go and you can buy product off the shelf and try to plug it into your business and make it work. Or you can put forth the resources to build it yourself so that it can evolve with your business model. Because efficiency can't be created by using somebody else's product, right? Because you're trying to plug the square peg into the round hole. It's never going to fit.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I learned very early on is that I didn't want to have the detriment of the company be to the technology that I was unable to modify and evolve. It was non-existent. And it's so funny because we think about the internet to us is just like, oh my gosh, the internet's always been there. The internet hasn't always been there. When I went to college, I was still in the freaking library. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And when it comes to, electronic signatures, in 2011, I was like an alien to our regulators to say, we want to move to electronic signatures. They're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, come on, come along with me. Let me teach you. Let me teach you this federal law that's out there. And so I had to go into the regulators and I had to teach them, and I had to get the blessing of them for them to realize that this absolutely can be done.
Yeah.
And as crazy as it sounds, sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you have to, you really have to approach the subject and get the resolution that you're looking for, even if it's with regulators.
Yeah.
Don't be scared of that. Approach it. Get them to embrace it. So in the state of Nevada, we were the very first to use electronic signatures.
Wow.
The very first, because we approached the subject with them. And then I was able to build that into my program.
Okay.
And 10 years later, I have a company come to me They're like, oh, you have to see our program. You have to see whatever. And I always love to look at other people's program because, you can learn something from everything. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, but you guys don't have electronic options available for clients to sign their documents. And this is in 2021. Think about this for a second.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow. Yeah, that's what I said. Wow. No, that won't work for us. We're way more efficient than that. So it's those little things. And that seems crazy. That story seems so archaic to tell, but that was revolutionary at the time. That was just 2011. It just seems like yesterday. But yeah, the efficiencies were there.
And so what are those efficiencies buying you? Are they buying you more time? Are they buying you better profitability in some way? Like
time, quality, and use of capital, right? I don't need more people because the technology is working for me.
Yeah. Was that tough at the time though, when there's only 10 of you and you have less money coming in and now we're having to create our own technology? Was that difficult?
So here's the irony of the less money coming in. Reducing it to $10,000 actually brought in more money.
Huh.
You have to look at it from two sides of the coin. It brought in more money because we reduced the barrier, so more people were willing to try it out. And then the more people that were willing to try it out, once they experienced it, because we were paying interest on a monthly basis, within the first 3 months, they were already all up to $50,000. And then it just kept going from there. And as our reputation and our integrity and the trust built, so did the amount that they invested with us.
That's cool. How long was that survival phase? Are we talking months? Are we talking years? As I know there's no definitive, and then we weren't in survival phase, but in your mind, how long was that?
The first year of Ignite funding, we funded $20 million. We fund $30 million a month now.
Holy cow. That is wild.
Yep.
What about the 700,000 in the hole? When did it turn profitable?
That was rough. When did it become comfortable? My break even at the time for us to handle all of our operational costs, all of our infrastructure costs, etc., was about $25 million under servicing. So these are loans that we're servicing on a regular basis, because Ignite Funding's model was not just a mortgage broker, you grab the origination fee and deuces, right? That wasn't our model. I have been referred to as a revenue whore, and I'm okay with it. That terminology comes from a place of of, how do I say this nicely? I don't like any dollar to go out the door. So why not be the originator? Why not be the servicer? Why not be the asset manager if you need be? Why not stand behind the product you're putting out there? So I was able to make money off the origination. I was able to make money off the servicing. And I was able to make money off of the fact that when we had to collect on loans, if I did right by the investors, returning 100% of their capital, then I was able to make a percentage off of that return.
Okay.
And so my revenue stream was all the way through the process. So it didn't take a whole lot of time for us to build up and have sustainability, because once we funded the loan, that was taking care of my operational costs. Servicing the loan was allowing me to increase the technology and the efficiencies of the company.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I was following my stream of income with my ability to continue to build the business.
Got it. God, this is so smart. I love that idea. I don't want any money going out the door if I don't have to.
No.
Why don't I be involved as many of these areas as, you got to be able to pull it off, right? If you overextend yourself and you can't pull it off, then that's a bad idea. But that's not what happened here. So I love that. What I'm curious about in general, and you've already mentioned so many changes that the business went through, but how much of what happened for you all and the industry in general was completely out of your hands? Didn't matter how you built the business up until that point. Didn't matter how you were doing business. We couldn't help it. This thing happened and we all went through it, versus what percent or what were the major lessons that you all, or maybe, the industry itself, learned coming out of 2008 that we don't want to find ourselves in this position again?
Oh, you are asking a loaded question here.
Okay. If I am,
I,
I'm not
I
meaning to.
no. It's a good question. It's a good question.
Okay.
I'm an open book, so you can ask me anything you want. Here's what I think happened. Because I'm watching the cycle go all the way through again, and it's really disheartening to me that we've allowed ourselves to get back into this position.
Huh.
So Ignite Funding's principles are collateralized real estate investments, right? You become a beneficial owner of the property from your lending if the borrower doesn't make payments. But that collateral is yours. If Ignite Funding pieces out, you still have your investment. If you invest in a syndication, which, oh my gosh, after 2008, everybody's like, well, we're not going to get into that world again. We don't want to have to deal with all these investors. We don't want to have to explain ourselves. We want to be able to hide behind our discretions or indiscretions. Everybody went to syndication. And they did it because they're like, oh, well, it's a security reason. And lawyers went out there and said, oh, I can charge $50,000 to get a syndication built.
What is
And
that?
syndication is you have individuals that manage a fund, and they put investors into the fund, and they put product into the fund. And you read your private placement memorandum, which has about 100 pages, maybe 150 pages of disclosure that you sign.
Huh.
And then you sit back and you cross your fingers and you hope those people do what they say they were going to do in that 150 pages.
Wow. Okay.
What happened is that became the normal. Everybody went to a fund environment because it was easier. You didn't have to explain yourself. You didn't have to be super transparent. There was very little reporting that needed to happen. There was no requirement for third-party audits. I mean, there was a lot of things that you didn't have to do. The government loosened up so much to rebuild the infrastructure of raising capital that it actually lost people billions and billions and billions of dollars.
Dang.
So some people refer to it as crowdfunding. And I said to my staff in 2013, I said, you watch. This is going to get built up to a point where these companies do not have the infrastructure or knowledge they need in order to run these types of businesses. And it's going to go for about 5 to 8 years, and it's going to collapse. And that's exactly what happened. And they laugh at me now because they're like, how did you know that? And I'm like, this is not a business for everyone. This is a hard business. You need to know, you need to be the underwriter. You can't outsource it to 16 different organizations and cross your fingers that it's good product. Anybody can raise capital, right? Anybody can really go out there and raise capital, but it's what you put that capital in that keeps the longevity going.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't manage those assets from origination to servicing and collection, it's just a matter of time before it's going to collapse. So, and you have too many hands in the pot. You're paying too much money out. You're not dropping money to the bottom line. I mean, I just watched the whole thing happen and I'm like, wow, what a train wreck. What an absolute train wreck. And it's unfortunate. Now, for us in our industry, people think I am absolutely batshit crazy for running it the way I do because I have to go out there and source my own loans. I don't work with other brokers. They don't bring me deals. We source our own loans. I go out and I market our own investors. I'm not working with institutional investors. I'd rather work with the mom and pops, the everyday people that think they can't invest in real estate. I want to show them they can, right? I'm not the person that's looking for the accredited investor. I'm looking for the person that has, $500,000 towards retirement. And they're like, I need some passive income. The market is just killing my retirement plan. What am I going to do? Those are the type of people that we like to work with. So the philosophy that I have is just, it's very different. But in order for me to actually fund those loans, I need them to complete disclosure. I need them to complete documentation. I need them to sign a special power of attorney. I need them to do a lot of things, and hurting all of that to fund the loan is not something most people want to contend with.
Yeah.
They just don't know how to make it an efficient, seamless, and enjoyable process for clients. We have mastered that.
That's
So,
beautiful.
yeah.
So they think you're crazy because they're thinking you're doing it too hard.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
takes too much energy. Why would you
Yeah.
waste
Why
all
would
that
you do that?
time?
Mm-hmm.
And you're
Yep.
thinking, well, first off, I'm doing it more efficient than you, so it's not
It's not
as
me. Yeah.
hard as you would
Yeah.
think. But what's the other reason? We know we're doing good deals.
Mine's sustainable.
Yeah.
When those clients come to me, they're choosing their investment. I'm not choosing it for them.
Hmm.
See, in a fund environment, you're choosing it for them. They have zero say in it whatsoever. What's the difference between investing in a market that you can't control and investing in a fund that you can't control?
Yeah.
What's the difference? There isn't one.
Yeah.
You know, you're rolling the dice in both scenarios. If you're picking the investment that you want to invest in, that is your choice. You're analyzing and you're looking at, okay, how long has this borrower been with Ignite Funding? What's their track record? Where are they located? Am I comfortable with commercial product or do I like residential? Do I want entry level homes? Do I like multifamily? Do I like apartments? Right? We're not a one trick pony. We have to evolve with what's going on in those markets. Not every market can handle the supply and demand of income, entry level homes. 18 months before interest rates were increasing, I was getting out of that market because our loan duration is so short that I can move in and out and change our portfolio, turn it over,
Hmm.
and get my clients out of what storm is to come. Right. So we got out of entry level. But when you look at the fund environment, they really try to focus on one component. Their whole focus is apartments.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what happens to apartments when interest rates go back down to 3% and everybody's buying houses? How are you going to get those rents anymore? You're not.
Yeah.
Right? And we're going to have a lot of empty apartment complexes. Well, but right now might be a great time for us to be engaging in apartment developers,
Yeah.
right? Because they have a window of opportunity. Is that window long enough for us to get in and out unscathed? See, I have that ability to be nimble and adapt to those things where others don't. Those funds are 3 to 5 year time horizons. 3 to 5 years, I mean,
A lot can
that's why
happen.
they come and go. It's not sustainable.
Wow. So yeah, there's a level of flexibility that I think the last 10 plus years has taught us is almost a requirement now, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Things just keep changing, whether it's
Mhm.
technology, whether it's, interest rates. I mean, so many things have just been volatile to a degree that the flexibility is going to be key to keep staying on top, is what it sounds like.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What are some other things, and maybe there is nothing else because you've already told me a robust amount of things that you guys have adapted on, your offerings, the types of investments. Is there any other things that you've realized are kind of critical to your success versus some of your competitors?
Um, you cannot not talk about the employees.
Yeah.
Um, the people drive the business. Carrie gets the privilege of leading those people, but the people have to want to be led. And so if you are not a good leader, your results will reflect that.
Hmm.
And so I spend a lot of time working with the people that I work with to get the best out of them. We all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. Identifying those is the key. Utilizing those strengths to your best abilities is wonderful, but improving people's weaknesses is just as important. So we have a lot of heart-to-heart conversations here.
Yeah.
We're always looking to evolve. I've been talking with my management staff a lot about 2025 and the changes that we're going to make and the growth that I'm expecting and all of these things. And so we are in, last quarter of every year should really be a very uncomfortable transition period,
Hmm.
every year. And if you're not willing to get yourself to that very uncomfortable place, do not expect growth next year.
Hmm.
And don't wait until January, because by the time you implemented things, it's your end of Q1 and your results are going to reflect that. And so I really enjoy getting people out of their comfort zone, making changes. This is kind of funny. I will move employees to different locations of the office just to change their perspective.
Wow.
So nobody ever gets super comfortable sitting in their office or their cubicle, because moving them around to get that perspective, I don't think most people realize how important that is for
Yeah.
personal growth. I really don't.
Tell me more about that. I mean, it could sound like a gimmick, but I think you're right. Like, tell me more about just even the physical nature of the person, let's say, who for 20 years came to work at the exact same time, sat at the same desk, had everything arranged the same way, looked at the same wall or same window, versus what you're doing. What does that do for you?
Okay. I'm going to give you an example of an individual I just recently moved. He's in my marketing department. He may be able to hear me through these walls because our studio is next to his office. And I hope that he does, because I would say this to an employee's face too. I've no qualms with being very open and honest with the employees. He has moonlighted as a bartender for over 20 years.
Cool.
So bartenders are extroverts, right? By nature. They have to be. That's how they make money. Exactly. But then you have this, you have this hidden talent. You're a web developer. You are a marketing genius, but nobody knows it, because when you're in the office, you turn into an introvert. Why do you do that? Because you spend so much time being an extrovert that it's exhausting. So when you come into the office, you become an introvert. So I didn't know this at the time, but I put him in an office. And I put him in an office where he didn't need to really get out, right? So I'm basically aiding and abetting to his introvert behaviors that are happening in the office. So I needed to change that. So I thought, okay, he's on the preferred trust side right now. And preferred trust is, I would consider to be more of a, it's run like a bank. So it's a little bit more stringent, a little bit more, square peg, square hole, pretty simple.
Yeah.
I moved him over to Ignite Funding because it's a different energy. It's a different group, little edgier. And it was the furthest office away from mine. So I knew when he had to talk to me, and I knew he didn't like to use the phone. So he's getting up out of his office now. So I've got him out of the office, and he has to walk all the way across the third floor to see me, right? So now he's passing by people. Now he's communicating with people. Now he's coming to me. Now he's out. He's out and about. He's hearing different things. He's engaging differently. He's literally turned into my extrovert within about a 30-day period.
Wow.
And I'm sitting in a studio right now, and I'm hearing a chuckle behind me because I have another member of my marketing staff that is like, holy crap, that is exactly what happened to Stephen.
Wow.
And so it's finding those tweaks that you can make. Do you know how much more I'm going to get out of Stephen this next year?
Yeah.
It's going to be.
You turned his energy source back on.
Absolutely.
If you're an extrovert having to sit in a room by yourself all day, you might, if he's bartending at night, he might like it for the first hour.
Yes.
Right? The first hour is maybe a necessary recharge, because even extroverts can get overcharged and need a little bit. But it's hour 2, hour 3, hour 4, he's starting to not be himself because he doesn't have the hookup, the energy hookup that he's used to getting from interactions, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
So I hate to say that I've become his hookup again, but I'm just kidding. All kidding aside, I mean, I hope that he sees that. I don't know if he does or not, but I can tell you the people around him 100% see it.
Well, it's so funny. I want to say I saw the same thing happen. And by the way, you're the first. I've done 300 plus episodes. I've not heard someone pay attention to their people that well and be that creative, like a coach, moving people around positions. And so kudos to you. That is fantastic. What it makes me think of, though, is the opposite personality. I coached a guy. He's like he's a world famous hacker, but for the good guys. So he was a white hat hacker.
Okay.
And he turned his skills. He didn't used to be. He reformed. He turned his skills into cybersecurity. And so he was building a tech cybersecurity company. I was coaching him, but he was a part of an incubator. And so we coached all the executives of these in the incubator, and they kept requiring him to be in the office all the time. And he was having to have all these interactions. And I remember talking to him, and I was like, "How you doing?" He's like, "I'm exhausted." I was like, okay. I was like, what do you need? Like, you're just talking to me. I'm not your boss. Like, what do you need?
Yeah.
He's like, I wish they would put me in a room, give me a Red Bull, and let me do my work for 8 hours straight.
Yep.
And I was like, that's what you want? He's like, yes. He's like, I'm a coder. I'm a hacker.
Yeah.
Like, it's exhausting. He didn't have people made him anxious.
Yep.
And he's like, I'm not saying don't check on me. He's like, but check on me every 8 hours.
Yeah.
And so we were able to give that incubator that feedback, and they finally left him alone and let him not over isolate. You know, you don't want to
Yeah.
over isolate, but like
Mhm.
get his work done and get in a
Yeah.
flow and get it and go and it took off. You
Yeah.
know, and
That's
so
IT.
that's IT.
You know how
Yeah,
many? I have 3 members of IT. You know how many of them work in the office? 0.
yeah,
0. And I have no remote positions per se, but you can't put them in an office environment. Period.
too
That's not where they
distracting.
thrive. That is not where they thrive. I
Yeah.
don't know how businesses miss that, but that's not where they thrive.
Yes, 100%. And it was like relieving to him that someone understood that and was willing to not accommodate, but like set him up for success.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
You might be the first person that asked.
yeah, I know. I was just like, he didn't seem himself. Every call I was getting on with him, he seemed more and more overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They were falling behind in certain things he was supposed to be delivering on. And he's a hardworking kid.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, like, oh, dude, you're floating around. People are popping in your office all the time. They're asking you questions, and your job is pretty simple. He's like, I need to get in there and finish developing the freaking tech on this so that
Yep.
we can get it out to the customers and blah, 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 blah. And they just keep disrupting me. So,
Yeah.
you mentioned something else that like literally got me excited about business and my personal life, even though it's daunting. And that's my question is you said, if you're not ready to be very uncomfortable at least once a year to make progress, you're going to fall behind.
Hmm.
How do you, and I'm not expecting that there's a perfect answer and it's easy, but like people, myself included, can cling to our comfort zones
Yes.
like pretty hard.
Yeah.
And so if that's a yearly cadence, that's pretty
Mhm.
often that we are getting our people to get uncomfortable again. How do we
Yeah.
do that in a way that is welcomed or accepted or like, does that make sense? How do we do that?
Yeah. You have to do it from the jump.
Okay.
You can't become that person later on in life.
Hmm.
I know that, through coaching, leaders, they can change, but you are who you are.
Hmm.
And so you either possess the talent to do that from the get-go. So when you hire somebody, we have when we do interviews with individuals, a lot of the interview has to do with psychology of the person. You
Hmm.
don't really know what you're going to get until they get into the office and get to work, right? They can put anything they want on that piece of paper.
Yeah.
I can't call the college and verify that they went. Let's just be honest, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people are not honest about that. I many times like to walk into an interview with their resume, or they'll give me their resume. The first thing I do with the resume, I crumple it up in front of their face
Yeah.
because I want to get to know the person. And so the next thing I do is I give them a challenge. It's a 90-second challenge, super easy challenge, just to kind of see what kind of person they are, how they'll react.
Hmm.
And it's so stupid. You pick out 4 crayons for somebody. Okay. You put 4 crayons in front of them. You let them pick 4 crayons. This is interesting because you're like, are they going to pick the same colors? Do they care? Do they just open it up and throw 4 crayons on it? Or do they sit there and pick colors that are different than the ones you picked?
Hmm.
Right? Think about that for just a second about that person and who they are.
Yeah.
And then we have a piece of paper that we flip over that came out of a coloring book, a very inappropriate coloring book. Okay. So I'll let you just run wild with your imagination.
Yeah.
And we give them 90 seconds, 8 crayons, and 2 instructions. You have to use all 8 crayons, stay in the lines, 90 seconds. We flip it over and we continue to carry on a conversation with them while they are intaking what they are seeing on this piece of paper, trying to draw with these crayons and have a conversation with me at the same time. That is how you find people that are adaptable.
Wow.
If they cannot complete the challenge, they will not adapt to your change, period.
Huh.
So the skill set may be there, but we need good people too. It's just as important.
Walk me back to that. I'm curious. What would failure look like in that? Like, I'm sure you've seen people succeed and fail. What has failure looked like? And then what's the juxtaposition? Like when you watch somebody like, yeah, they're going to be good. What did that look like? And that,
From the CRAN experience?
yeah, literally.
Okay. So it depends on the job that you're hiring for. So if you're hiring for a creative person, I have a creative person that's sitting in my studio right now that actually took this challenge.
Uh-huh.
And they will take the time, if they're creative and that's what you're looking for, you want to make sure that they pick 8 separate colors, right? Because a creative person isn't going to pick 2 yellows, 2 blues, 2, right? Yeah. They're going to look at opposite colors. And then when they look to color, they're very strategic with the way that they color. If you're super creative, you're going to use all the colors really fast. If you need to analyze it before you can get going, you're going to look at it for a minute. You're going to spend about 10, 15, 20 seconds on it, and then you're going to start going, right? And you're going to may or may not be able to carry on a conversation with me, right? I don't care if you get through all the crayons. It's the use of the crayons for that type of job, right? And when you're interviewing an accounting person, what's an accounting person? What are you looking for in an accounting person?
I want black and white, logical thinking, ordered thinking.
Yep. They probably are only going to use one color.
Mm-hmm.
They're never even going to consider those other colors because that's not what they do.
Yeah.
They're very narrow-minded in their approach because they're programmed to focus on numbers.
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to focus on the client call across the cubicle. They're not going to focus on those things. They're going to be uber centric to one color, always very well colored in a box. Like there's just a lot to learn about that. You're not going to be able to carry on a conversation at the same time that they're trying to focus on coloring.
Yeah.
So every role, you should expect a different outcome. So you really have to understand the psychology of that person, and then talk to them about it. Tell them this isn't pass or fail, right? It is a test, but it's not pass or fail. And then you tell them the results. That gives you an opportunity to tell them what type of person you believe they are. And you just sit there and watch them nod their heads like, oh my gosh, that is me. And now I know what I have, as from the person side, right? The personality side. Now I'm ready to get into the technical side. If the personality side doesn't match what we're looking for, we don't need to continue on and waste time in that interview.
Yeah. So that's really cool because that means that not every position, I would imagine, not every department or position needs to be that super flexible, ready to change every year in big ways, or is it? I don't know. It's sounding now more.
Okay. I go through every department every year. Yep.
And do what?
Make changes that I think will be more efficient. What do I need to get out of that manager? What is going to drive the business forward? I'll give you an example. The accounting department. You wouldn't think you would be making sweeping changes in an accounting department, right? That sounds silly. But 3 weeks ago, I moved all of my client service accounting reps at Preferred Trust over to my operations team. Why the heck would I do that? That doesn't make any sense. Well, client service representatives, whether you're accounting, whether you're processing applications, processing investments, you're a client service representative. First and foremost, right? You're taking care of the clients. I can get better use out of my controller from not managing 3 more people and focusing on departmental budgets. That's what I want to spend my attention on, right? Yeah. I want to put on heightened awareness, my managers, that we now are doing departmental budgets. So you're going to spend the money, you're going to be accountable for it, right? Instead of me being accountable for it, I need to teach them more skill sets to make them a better manager so that as we grow, I'm not taking the brunt of all of these tasks. I can't do that. And so I have to evolve. And so therefore they have to evolve.
Wow. God, that's so fun. How do you have eyes on all this? Like there's so much that you could be looking at and thinking about, but you have real like in touch awareness of the different departments, of your different people. Is it because you see that as one of your primary roles as the leader of the company? That
is my role. That is my role. My entire role is to make sure that everything runs efficiently, compliantly, that we're if we're not hitting our goals, identifying the reasons why, because it's not always we're in a weird year, right? Election years, the economy's people are questioning things.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of, the micro and the macro economics happening here. A lot of psychology of what people are thinking as you get on the phone with them that was drastically different from last year and the year before that. You have to evolve with what's going on.
Yeah.
And so we may not hit our numbers that we wanted to hit this year, but we're hitting other challenges that are strengthening our team for things that may happen in the future. So I have to look at those as wins, even if you don't hit your numbers. You've got to
Yeah.
really focus in on, okay, if we're not hitting these numbers, why? Okay, let's analyze that for just a second. All right, so our average investor went from, X dollar amount to X dollar amount, but we're opening more accounts. Okay, well, that's weird. Do we change our marketing around? What happened? I mean, you're really analyzing these things throughout the year, not just one time a year, but throughout the year to
Mm-hmm.
see, geez, what's happening? Where we've seen the new money go up on the Ignite funding side from existing clients. Why? Well, we made some sweeping changes last year on our client services side, and now we're seeing the effects of it, right? So it's fun to teach them, like, we did this and look what happened. We didn't do this and look what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it really gives us an opportunity to reflect on some of those things. I have to be the eyes and ears of the companies. That's your role as a leader, whether
Yeah.
you want to sign up for it or not. If you're blessed with that responsibility, then you need to take that responsibility. Drew, I have thousands of people that depend on me. This isn't just about my staff. This isn't just about the owners of the company. Thousands and thousands of investors depend on me to make the right decisions, period.
Mm-hmm.
I am managing over $1 billion of clients' funds at this point. If you think that responsibility doesn't come with a whole lot of work, it does.
Mm-hmm.
And a whole lot of stress and a whole lot of those things. It absolutely does. So I have to be the eyes and ears for these thousands of people.
Yeah.
That's my job. That's what they
Mm-hmm.
depend on.
Well, so you just mentioned where I was going to go next, which I'm just
Work-life balance. Here he goes.
yeah, and I don't even know if that's not the word. I don't really even that's not even the frame necessarily that makes sense in my mind anymore. It's more that I think about it like this: if you got a lot either weighing on you or drawing on you, right? Like drawing energy, drawing time, drawing strength, drawing focus. What have you built into your life that gives that back to you so you can keep giving it?
Oh, this is a tough question for me. I use the word work-life balance because I don't have it. And it's kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
You do get to a point where it's difficult to have that anymore. So my recharge is when I sit in a room with my managers once a month. We meet, and a big part of it is just to shoot the shit, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
decompress. What's going on? Employee issues. This is happening. That's happening. You experiencing that? I'm experiencing that. Oh my gosh, here's what I did. This work, that work. But just really just having that time to decompress. And we meet for about 3 solid hours, and it just flies by. It
Wow.
absolutely flies by. And so having that time to realize that you're not the only one experiencing these issues,
Mm-hmm.
and then having some time to kind of talk through them is it. I mean, we don't go in there and go, oh, let's go over every single number and this, that, or what. No, that's not what it's about. It's just about reconnecting as a team.
Yeah.
Because really, those are the only people that you can depend on to go to. And there are times that I will walk in that room and, I'm a female, I can get emotional, and I will just start bawling and be like, the weight of the world needs to come off of me, and y'all need to pick up a piece of it. Because Carrie is exhausted. Here's what I need from you guys. So you just have to be real with them. You got to tell them what you need. It's okay to show emotion. It's not the end of the world. Let it out, because when you do, it keeps you going. It keeps you, it re-energizes you. Outside of work, to answer that question, I just finished building a house up in Utah, 2 years, and that's my sanctuary. I can go there. There is no real internet. There's one TV in the house upstairs, and I don't like to go upstairs. That's my time to read. That's my time to just do whatever makes me happy and solely me happy. That's
Yep.
my selfish time. And I have to have that. That is a place that I go each weekend, kind of religiously,
Good.
get in the car, drive the 3 hours. As soon as you get to a certain point, you have no more cell service and you shut it off. You just have to shut it off. That's how I recharge. Those two things, my management staff, and the getaway.
I love that. In the getaway, this is me getting to know your personality. What, maybe it's not the same every time. Maybe it is the same every time, depending on your personality. What are those things that recharge you? Is it fiction, nonfiction? Is it walking? Is it talking? Is it watching and, vegging out? Like what do you find kind of just fills you up?
I have a need for thrill seeking and speed.
Cool.
A lot of people, and probably the people that are behind me in the production studio, do not know this about me. They do know about me because they know the type of vehicle that I drive.
Okay.
But what they don't know is that my true passion is dirt vehicles.
Really?
And so I scare people with my driving. I'm listening behind me and they're like, oh yeah. Like,
we can hear you when you pull in the parking lot, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can. I do have to replace the tires on the car frequently.
Perfect.
But that's what the car's intended for, to be driven.
Yeah.
Right. You don't buy a sports car to not drive it.
Right.
You don't buy a UTV with 240 horsepower to not see if you can use all 240 horsepower.
Let's go.
That is who I am. I grew up on dirt bikes. And so, yeah, I like to jump it off cliffs.
What?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Holy crap. So are we doing like a quad? Are we doing ATV? What are we riding around on?
Yeah, I have a side-by-side right now, which is a little wider than I'm used to. It's 81 inches wide. 240 horsepower. I prefer to solo drive because I really do scare passengers and I don't want to harm anybody else.
Sure.
So when somebody gets in the car with me or I'm driving, an all-terrain vehicle, and they're in there with me, I will tone it down a little bit. I mean, I'll scare them just enough that they might pee themselves a little bit, but not enough that I got to change the seats, right? Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So, but when they're not in that vehicle and you're trailing behind me, you probably cannot see me anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. I want to know how fast it can go. I want to know how high it can jump. I want to know how fast it can take a corner.
Where do you get to do that? Is there public land or courses or whatever near where that place is?
Yeah. So there's sand dunes.
Cool.
That are around the area. So, you can put your paddles on and go. Or we do have a lot of BLM land that I can ride on. Again, I have an issue with my width because 81 inches is pretty wide. I'm used to driving things that are about 60. So this past weekend, you're tapping the trees as you're turning the corners and that sort of things. It is a tight fit. But, it bounces off, it keeps going, and then you send it to the shop to get fixed.
Wow. Would you ever want to do like amateur racing or anything? Or do you like just being by yourself and who cares about racing?
I don't know that I'd ever want to race. It's a release. It certainly is a release for me, but I don't know that I would ever want to race. There have been times, my son grew up racing. My husband, used to manage NASCAR teams.
Wow.
My dad and I, built a Camaro together, and he was in racing early on. So I think it's just in my blood.
Yeah.
I think it's just it's running through my veins.
You're calling that back out of me. Like I'm having fun, nostalgic. My dad used to race BMWs, and again, he was a business owner, so it was not like it was an amateur thing on the amateur circuit, but getting to go there and watch that was so much fun. And what you said reminded me of a story that like stuck with me in so many ways. But his racing partner started a defensive driving school in the Atlanta area that was more realistic because his child's best friend lost their life in a car accident that didn't need to happen. They started to drift off the road on a highway and overcorrected. They freaked out, whipped the wheel back the other way, and fishtailed and flipped and all that stuff. And he was like, no one's teaching
Mm,
these people like real driving skills. We're sitting in a classroom
yeah.
80% of the time, and then you drive 30 miles an hour in a car, and that's what we call, learning. And so
Yeah.
they would rent out Atlanta Motor Speedway's parking lot,
Yep.
and you would spend 20% of the time in the classroom where they're talking to you about how to drive your car. But then everybody had to bring your car. So whatever car, if you had a Jeep, if you had a BMW, if you had a Corolla, you brought your
Yep.
car, and they
Hmm.
would take you through different drills. They would
Yeah.
make you, slide. They'd make you recover. They would
Yeah.
teach you how to drive fast and stop on time, all that stuff. So
Yep.
I did it, and I was having the time of my life.
That was
Like,
so much fun.
it was unbelievable. And so much so that I ruined the front shocks on my car. And so I thought I was done. I was so sad. I was like, Dad, there's one more day, and my car needs to get repaired. And he's like, well, take mine. And I was like,
Oh,
he had
really?
a Porsche 911 twin turbo.
Woo.
And I was like,
Here we
I,
go.
I can't drive yours. He's like, sure you can. And he's like, and I'll be your instructor, because he was one of the instructors. I was like, okay. And I went from being the kid flying around the track to putting around the track. I was so scared of hurting my dad's car, the power of it. It scared me. And I didn't know I was doing anything wrong, but at some point he goes, son, pull the car over. He's like, get out of line, pull the
Uh-oh.
car over. And so I pulled the car over. He goes, what are you doing? I was like, I'm driving. He's like, no, you're not. He was like, you're doing damage to my car. I was like, no, I'm not. And he said exactly what you said. He goes, this thing wants to go fast.
Yeah.
You're hurting it more by driving it slow. And this is what he said. He goes, take your foot off the damn brake and put it on the gas. Let's go have some fun.
Yep.
And I was like, okay. And then it became like a memory. But like, I think about that in life sometimes. My
Yeah.
personality, if I'm not careful, I'll start feeling all the weight of family, all the weight of business, and I'll
Yeah.
start playing protective. And I'll start experiencing like
hear ya.
anxiety and like pent up energy. And I'll have that memory like, oh no, I'm doing the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
I'm built for speed. I need
Yeah.
to make some decisions. I need to start going. I need to like find that extra gear, and then everything feels right again. Does
I
that make sense?
I agree with you. I'm going to tell you something that most people probably, I shouldn't say this.
Okay.
If I don't hit 100 miles an hour every day, my day is not complete. And so I should not be saying that.
We can edit this out if you're worried about the local police listening to this.
It's okay. I mean, trust me, they've got me a few times.
I bet they have.
They've got me a few times. But, I've been able to laugh with them about it because, again, I think it has to do with part of my personality.
Yes.
Like, I don't drink coffee. I've never had a cup of coffee in my life. I run off
Interesting.
of pure adrenaline. And I say that to you now that you know a little bit more about me.
Yeah.
And you don't have to cut this out.
Okay.
But, you need to have that release.
Yes.
And, Monday through Friday, I don't get the Utah clean air up in the mountains, whatever. So how do I make sure that I take care of that?
Mm-hmm.
And so I happen to live on the outskirts of Las Vegas. And so the beauty of that is there's a certain stretch on the way home every night where you pass the last light, and it's about 2 miles of this like windy road, like I mean, it's
Ooh.
just like, it's sexy for me. It's like this windy road where I'm like, all right, girl, here we go, and as I
Yes.
turn the corner to go into the master plan community, I still keep her going. Like, I take the corner pretty hard. And that's probably why I need tires so much, because, you got to drift it around the corner, and, you got to, and then it's windy again. It's just like, it is
So fun.
it's the quintessential, like, last before you pull it into the garage, like, moment for me.
And what are we driving? I need a picture here. What are we driving home?
So we are driving an F1 Aston Martin.
Let's go.
And so we just go. We just kind of glide through the streets at night. So
Oh, there's no gliding. That thing is ripping through the streets.
yeah, so yeah, that's probably something,
So fun.
you've brought out something that I don't think most people know about me there. But they're learning. They're learning
Yes.
as they go.
Good. That's what I want. I want to know who you are. And it makes so much sense, even looking back at just your personality in general, how you attacked in the business, it sounds like you get as much energy from the adrenaline of leading the business Like it's all
Yeah.
similar to me. Like you want to be going, you don't want to be sitting around, you don't want to get stale, stagnant. We want to evolve, we want to change, we want to go,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. Step
And
on it.
ah, let's step on it. But what's cool is you've built these constraints into the business itself. Then in one way you're stepping on the gas, but you're also steering it very strategically.
Very.
It's not wild, it's not careless. It's like you're actually being more strategic and slowing down in some areas to speed up
Yep,
later. Does that make sense?
absolutely.
So I like the kind of the yin and the yang of your team and your personality in that mix where very much moving forward, but we're doing it calculated, we're doing it smart, efficient, different,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Super cool. All right, one question to end because I know I've already kept you here over an hour. I always just love to know if a book recommendation. I don't know why I stuttered over that, but I was trying to think of how I want to frame it for you. It could be fiction or nonfiction. It doesn't have to be business related. If it is business related, fine. But what's something, now that we know you a little better, that you would recommend to our audience to read?
Ooh. Oh, Drew, are your children still
Yeah,
in the room?
gone. And I got you on my headphones.
So, okay. I will tell you that any
I'm
book
getting excited.
that has a very sexual connotation to it
Okay.
is fun to read because I don't get to live in the fantasy world. And
Yeah.
I have had to manage a strip club before when we took back an asset. So I've got funny stories about that. But you know what? When you read, I intake so much business content throughout my day
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
last thing I want to be reading is business content when I'm not here.
100%.
And so I would say to you that I don't know that there's one in particular. I like to read series of books that I'm just complete nonsense.
Yeah.
But
Like the spicy fiction stuff.
spice, yeah, I really like the
Yeah.
spice. I really like something that's like we're back to the engines roaring again, right? I mean, you really want
Yeah.
something that's like just fun and exciting. And
Yeah.
that's me.
I've I've learned about that whole world from my wife. She same thing. About 5 years ago, she stumbled onto that genre,
Oh
and
my gosh.
I benefit
I
from
know.
it. So
I
I
can't
don't.
get out of it.
Yeah, but I've learned. She's like, I'm like, break it down for me, because she's like, no, there's different worlds. There's like slow
Uh-huh.
burn. There's enemies to lovers, and like all this different stuff. I'm like, it's fascinating
It
because
is.
it's as much the story. Because she'll be like, oh, that story sucks. Like it has to
Oh
have
yeah.
actual story or a world you want
Yep.
to be in, resonate with the
Yep.
characters, all that kind of stuff. But I love that. I'm so glad you said that, because again, I'm the same way. I don't read that, but I read fiction at night
Oh.
because I don't want to be thinking about
Yeah.
business. I don't. It's what I do all
Yeah.
day.
I agree.
I want a good
Yeah.
escape.
And I
You
read
know.
my fair share of business books and those sorts of things, but most of that I do on audio, you know.
Yep.
But when it comes to sit down, open up an actual book, that's my go-to.
Heck yeah. All right. For any of our audience that would be interested in that, is there a favorite author that a gateway author? They'd be like, hey, start with this, and you'll see if you like this genre or not.
Gosh, I jump around a lot when it comes to that. You know, probably my favorite series, and I watched the movies with it, was the Grey series,
Okay.
because it it allowed you to tell a story long enough. She captured the audience long enough. When you can turn something like that into a movie, that's fascinating to me that people can still
Yeah.
watch. And, you know, you can kind of get the pieces to it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when I can read a book series and download their movie series, man, that
It's done something
you
pretty
know
good.
that it's like everybody needs to read that, needs to experience that.
Yeah.
um you know, and the beauty of that one is it also had some business elements to it where I'm like, here's a woman that wasn't going to just be the side piece. She wanted
Yeah.
a professional career, and she wanted to garner that on her own,
Yeah.
without having, you know, the owner be the reason she moved forward. And so I think that's why I really liked that series. And it's so funny because
Mm,
it's old now, but occasionally when I will go on a longer vacation, there's very few movies that I've actually downloaded. I'll watch them
cool.
just for like some downtime. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. I'm getting invaded by little nuggets
Oh,
right
here they
now. So I
come.
think that's my cue. But Carrie, this has been probably my favorite interview I've done this year. You
Oh,
are
thank you.
spectacular. I loved your vulnerability. Your wisdom was, there's so many clips. I'm excited. I want everybody to listen to the whole interview, but I've already thinking like there's so many clips of wisdom of what you've done with these two businesses that I'm so excited for the world to hear. So thank you for being on the show. And we've got to have you back again sometime.
Absolutely. I'd love to be back. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Founders, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and hop into our monthly founder email so we can ensure you stay on the edge of peak performance and massive business results.